Hello, everyone, and welcome to those of you who are watching this on the live cast, and also welcome to those of you who are watching this on video delay. It's September 10th, 2015, just a few days before Rosh Hashanah, where we're all supposed to be doing spiritual stuff. And we're going to do some linguistics instead in this adult education class for Congregation Beth Yisrael. I have the traditional pre-Rosh Hashanah cold tonight, so I might not be as lively as I usually am, but I am going to do my best to make this as entertaining and as as lively edutainment or something, some combination of education and entertainment. Tonight's topic. You can see this as live because I'm having difficulty with the screen share. Just bear with me for a moment. There we go. We have the screen share up and working now. You remember last week, in the first class, this is the third of a series of 3 classes. The first class, we did the Eastern Semitic languages. We did Akkadian. The second class, we did one part of the Northwest Semitic family. We did the Aramaic branch. And for the final class, for the third class of the series, we're going to do the other branch of the Northwest Semitic family, of the Canaanite languages, all of them besides Hebrew. We're not doing Moabite either, but we're going to do Phoenician and Ugaritic. And we're going to close the series with an example from the Central Semitic language family, and that, of course, is Arabic, which after Akkadian and Aramaic, Arabic went on to become the third great Semitic language of empire in the Near East. But we're going to start with the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians, of course, were to the north of Eretz Israel, places like Sidon and Tyre. But because they were great traders, because they had such great commercial contacts across the Mediterranean, they spread Phoenician, or as it's called, Punic civilization, all around the coast of North Africa, and even up along the coast of the Iberian Peninsula. I often joke that if Hannibal had been more careful with his elephants, if he had preserved more of his forces during the Second Punic War, when people went to study classical languages, they would study a Semitic language, like Punic, instead of studying Latin, because Rome would have been wiped out and the entire course of history would have been different. But Punic is a Semitic language. It's the same thing as Phoenician. And Hannibal is a Semitic name, Hanun Baal. May Baal be gracious, or Baal is gracious. And so this is probably, this was a very widely spread Semitic language among the Mediterranean coast. Even as late as Augustine, who lived in the 4th and 5th century CE, there was knowledge of Punic or Phoenician in Carthage. Augustine, who we don't think knew very much Greek or very much Hebrew, would make puns in his writings between Latin and Phoenician. And an example would be that he would say that proof of the Trinity is that you can't say salvation or salus without saying salus, which is a Phoenician word for 3, related to the Hebrew word shalosh for 3. So this could have been, I mean, it could have been a much bigger language if the Punic Wars had gone differently. But even so, the effects were widely felt across the Mediterranean. In addition to spreading the language, the Phoenicians tragically spread the Canaanite religion. Part of the things that the prophets rail against the Canaanite influence is the institution of child sacrifice. And this is a picture of a Tophet in Carthage. This Tophet's from the Hebrew Bible. It's used to describe a burning place. And this is a place where this is a cemetery for the victims of child sacrifice, which the Phoenicians spread to North Africa and wherever they went, because in addition to the Canaanite language, they also spread the Canaanite religion. There are people who dispute that this is in fact what happened. When you bring up sensitive topics, people always get defensive. You talk about cannibalism, people say, well, no, there's no such thing. You talk about child sacrifice, people say, well, no, there's no such thing. Look, people can argue about anything, but one of my postulates, there was a person, William of Ockham, who brought us Ockham's razor. The principle of parsimony, which says when you have two theories that fit the evidence, you should prefer the simpler of the two. Well, I have my own razor, Bill of Bangor's razor, that when you have two theories that account for the data, always choose the most depressing one, because that's probably the true one. Not the principle of parsimony, but the principle of pessimism. And so I tend to believe the worst about things. So this is, I'm on the side that says that this is in fact a cemetery devoted to child sacrifice. But if you were doing a book on the gifts of the Phoenicians, you probably wouldn't use this example, but you would use this example, which is the alphabet that they spread with their travels along the Mediterranean basin. If you look at these letters, and you remember when we looked at the early Canaanite and early Aramaic alphabets last week, you'll see that they look very similar. This is to the right, we have the signet of taken from Syria. This is Old Aramaic, and of course to the left, we have Charlton Heston holding the historically accurate tablets of the Ten Commandments. And so the Venetians spread this alphabet, and whereas in the Middle East, it went on to develop into the Aramaic alphabet, which you can see is the second column from the right, or to the Arabic alphabet, which you can see is the first column on the right. Among the Greeks and the Latins, this developed into the alphabet that we use to this very day, with some changes. You look at, for instance, the letter Aleph on top. The letter A in the Roman alphabet looks very much like a Phoenician Aleph that has been tipped onto its side. It's, of course, but it's not used as a consonant in the Roman alphabet. It's used as a vowel, all. You have bet, B, Gimel becomes C in the Roman alphabet. It's Gamma in the Greek alphabet. Daled, again, and for Hey, you have a change, because the Greeks and the Romans, their languages were less inflected, and they seem to have the need to express the vowels in writing. The Hey became the E in our alphabet, and it remained a consonant Hey in Hebrew and in Arabic. So that is that's the contributions of the Phoenicians standing on one foot. The other Canaanite language that I want to speak about a bit is Ugaritic. And if I was giving this talk in 1915 instead of 2015, this is not something that we would know anything about. Ugaritic is it's named for the city in which a stash of tablets were found in 1928. The name of the city today is Ras Shamra. It's in Syria. And what we found in this city, which had been destroyed, we believe in the 13th or 12th century BCE, we found a whole library of literature and insights into civilization that prior to 1928 we had no idea existed. Ugaritic has an alphabet, but they use the cuneiform writing system to express it. If you remember the cuneiform system of Akkadian that we saw, there were really close to 200 basic signs that you had to know because you weren't representing just letters, you had to represent the syllables. But for Ugaritic, there are 28 or so signs that can tell you everything. It's written in cuneiform, and it's a real blessing that they used cuneiform because it's the only way that these tablets would have survived. If Ugarit had done everything on paper like other cultures, it never would have lasted 3,000 years to be found in 1928. But we found it, and in short order, it was deciphered. And Ugaritic gives us a great insight into the literature and to the religion of the area north of Israel, the area of Syria, Lebanon, the northern religion that was always being criticized by the prophets. One of the things that, this is sort of a famous find that people have pointed to. I'm going to do something heretical here. So whenever I get ready to do something heretical, I say the word allegedly. So this is all alleged. If you say the word allegedly, everything after that becomes okay. And but if you don't want to hang around for the heresy, tune back in about 7 minutes or so. But this is the psalm that we do both on Friday night for Kabbalat Shabbat, and we do it on Saturday morning when we put the Torah away. This is Psalm 29. And in the rabbinic tradition, it is associated largely with the theophany, with the revelation, which is the reason that we say it on Saturday morning. As we put the Sifrei Torah away, as we put the Torah scrolls back into the Ark, we want to sing a song about revelation, and all of the references to Kol Adonai, to Kol Hashem, are taken to be references to the voice of God, which spoke down from the mountains in the giving of the law and the Luchot HaBrit. So in our reception of this, this is a song, this is a psalm about revelation. And of course, there's another meaning to the word call. I mean, rather than voice, it can mean thunder. And that's really what it seems to be talking about here. If you look at it in its context, this does seem to be about a storm. It does seem to involve the north rather than the south. It mentions places like Sirion and Lebanon. It does have some uncomfortable pointers to a polytheistic system. Havu ladonai b'nei Elim, O sons of God, render unto Hashem. And taking all of those things that we always knew about this psalm, but finding little clues among the Ugaritic writings, that little phrases of this that we found in reference to Baal, who is the god of rain and storms. And adding to that, the discovery that Ugaritic poetry tended to use triplets and alliteration quite a bit. We see that there are the clear triplets here: Havu ladonai b'nei Elim, Havu ladonai kavod va'oz, Havu ladonai kavod shemo, 1, 2, 3. Or Kol Adonai al hamayim, Kol Adonai ba'choach, Kol Adonai be'harda, Kol Adonai shoveh arazim, 1, 2, 3. When you see the triplets, you wonder, well, if we, and this is where the heretical part comes, if we took out God's names and put in Baal's name, don't try this in shul, but you see that the alliteration is actually very powerful. Habu Baal b'nei Elim, Habu Baal kabod va'oz, Habu Baal kabod shamo. It kind of trippingly flows off the lips. And again at the end, LeBaal Mabul Yashab vayesheb Baal melech le'olam. And so the consideration is advanced. And it's not without controversy, but I think it's a powerful argument that Psalm 29 was in its original state a psalm that was written not to our God, but to Baal, and that it was a psalm that was, the focus was praying for rain, praying for a storm, because that was Baal's job, to bring the rain that would cause the crops to grow. And so this is the sort of discovery that, this is the sort of insight that's possible from the Ugaritic discoveries. The question is, what do you want to do with this? You can use it as an example of how we were able to take things that were idolatrous and transform them into our own setting, to take something that was about rain and Baal and make it into something that was about Adonai, and that could be used for the revelation, for the theophany. Or you could go in more disturbing directions. But that's this is one of the fascinating things that has come to us through the discovery into the study of this other Semitic language, Ugaritic. And so that's, we'll close off the heretical part. And that will close off our consideration of the Northwest Semitic languages. To conclude the series, I want to talk a little bit about Arabic. And I probably will not give Arabic the attention that it deserves, partially because the point of this is to introduce things that are strange to people. I don't think people knew about Akkadian. People might not have known as much about Aramaic. Certainly, I hope that the tidbits about Phoenician and Ugaritic were different. Arabic, we kind of know what it is. It's still a powerful world language. So I just want to talk a little bit about the origins, the state of the language today, and in particular, its influence on our understanding of Hebrew. This slide here is a plate from the Quran, the Islamic holy writing. And we know that before the time of the great expansion of Islam, there were probably many different dialects of Arabic spoken on the Arabian Peninsula. Arabic is classified usually as a Central Semitic language, Akkadian to the east, and you have the Western ones that we've just been studying. And of course, with the rise of Islam and its rapid expansion through the Middle East, one very particular dialect, one very particular form of Arabic becomes at least the literary standard for a large section of the civilized world. When you look at the alphabet, it's not, I don't think it's clear to people that this is the same Semitic alphabet that Hebrew uses, of the Canaanite alphabet, of the Aramaic alphabet, but it is certainly descended from the Aramaic alphabet, the square script that we studied last week. And the intermediate form is considered to be something like this. Remember, we looked at Middle Aramaic, Christian Syriac, that they developed a form of the alphabet for Aramaic that was descended from the square writing, but it became more cursive-like. They started to have joined forms. And it was from something like this that the alphabet that we call the Arabic alphabet appeared. And note well here that this is a manuscript of the Quran, the dashes and the loops above and below the writing that marks the short vowels in Arabic, the same way that the dots and the squares and the lines in Hebrew marks our vowels. Hebrew was probably the last Semitic language to do this. Some people think that Arabic was the first one to have this tradition because there was a great importance given to reciting the poetry of the Quran exactly. Some people think that this pointing system or something like this developed among the Syrian Christians first, and then it went on to the Arabs. The Hebrew systems all seem to be late. So one particular influence among Hebrew that we can see here is the custom of marking the short vowels with little extra dots or loops to ensure that the reading is done perfectly, to ensure that the sacred reading, the literary experience of revelation, is preserved with exactitude. The reason that we consider Arabic to be the third of the three great Semitic languages is because of this. This is a map of the world in the seventh century CE, and this shows the great extent of the conquering of Islam. This is the Islamic Empire, and wherever they went, Arabic became the languages of elites because it was the language of administration. If you wanted to deal with the rulers, you had to know Arabic. I mean, not only to deal with the rulers, but if you wanted to participate in the flowering Islamic civilization. We spoke last week of the preservation of Greek philosophy by the Baghdad school, who took it from the Syrian Christians and made it its own product of classical Islamic civilization. If you wanted to participate in that, in other words, if you wanted to be enlightened, if you wanted to be part of the upper class, in all of these places, you had to know Arabic. That's why Maimonides had to know Arabic. That's why Halevi had to know Arabic. It was a condition of being part of the upper classes. In terms of a spoken language, there's a disparity between places where Arabic was actually accepted as a spoken language and where it was accepted as the language of religion and literature, but not as a spoken language. Persia was very happy to use the Arabic alphabet for Persian. It's very happy to have Arabic as the language of the Quran, the language of Islam. The Persians also, but the Persians for the most part kept their own language. And this was true for large portions of the world that the Arabs conquered, that even where it became a language of administration for this entire swath of the world, it only became the language, the spoken language, largely in the places where Semitic languages had already been used, where they had already taken hold. But we see here the modern distribution of Arabic and all of its dialects. When we talk about Arabic as a world language today, there's a term that we always use, and that term is diglossia, which is to say that in all of these different regions, for each of these colors, for Iraq, for Lebanon, for different parts of the Arabian Peninsula, for Egypt, each of these areas has its own version of Arabic, and sometimes they can be quite different from each other. But alongside these different dialects is a standard literary Arabic based largely on the Quran that is intelligible among the educated people in all of these areas. And so somebody who speaks Arabic in Palestine, they know their Palestinian Arabic, Shami, but if they're educated, they know Quranic Arabic as well. Likewise with the Egyptians, likewise with the Libyans. Everyone has its own particular spoken language, but there's a formal language that can be used for newspapers, that can be used for religion, that's used for broadcasting, that is that is intelligible across all of these different dialects. And this is what we call diglossia. Beyond the area where Arabic is spoken, it's used as an official alphabet in a huge part of the civilized world. I mean, China has a significant Muslim population, so Arabic is a official alphabet of China. Likewise with India, likewise with certain parts of Africa. And so beyond where Arabic is spoken as a living language, there's a very large part of the world today that uses the Arabic alphabet as their means of communication. It's very interesting to consider the example of Persia, which has never really had a writing system of its own. If you go through this course, and remember the inscriptions at Buhistan, the inscriptions that were the Rosetta Stone for Akkadian, that even Old Akkadian was written in the East, was written in cuneiform, the writing system that they borrowed from the Babylonians and the Sumerians. For the West, they borrowed the writing system of the Aramaeans. They used the Aramaic alphabet for their communications. And finally, in modern times, well, since the time of the Muslim invasion, they've used the Arabic alphabet as their alphabet. So it's very interesting to consider that Persia has used each one of these three writing systems as its standard for its written language, and has never had a writing system all of its own. I guess it's not so unique not to have a writing system all of your own. I mean, we borrowed our alphabet from the Romans. But the fact that they've cycled through all of the big ones, I think, is a pretty interesting fact. To see the contribution that Arabic made to the understanding of Hebrew, this was largely, of course, during the Middle Ages. This was the time when the Jewish world was divided between living in the Islamic world and living in the Christian world. And for the first several centuries, until the High Middle Ages, the Islamic world was the place to be if you were Jewish. It was a much more developed civilization. It was a much more stable civilization. It was a much more wealthy civilization. And it's under the influence of this civilization that we begin to understand Hebrew scientifically, through the recognition that Arabic is a sister language, and we can take patterns that we see in Arabic, but we don't always see them in Hebrew, and by incorporating those patterns into Hebrew, we can learn about the language. I mean, first, Arabic preserves more distinct phonemes than any other language in the Northwest family, which means that things that are root letters that are similar in Hebrew, and you don't understand why they have different meanings, you can see the differences when you look at the Arabic roots, which preserves a different phoneme. And so the fact that there's a larger variety of sounds preserved allows us to learn about Hebrew by studying Arabic. Arabic is considered to be grammatically more conservative than Hebrew. That is to say that there are forms, and that there's a fullness to the grammar that is not present in biblical Hebrew. And when you see the fuller form, sometimes that helps you understand the forms that appear to be deficient. And so through that way, we learned things about the Hebrew language. And finally, Arabic inflections are more robust. That's to say that the triconsonantal structure of Semitic languages is more obvious. And one of the challenges of Hebrew, I'm teaching a biblical Hebrew class at the moment, and we've just finished learning about the healthy verb, and we're going to spend the next year studying the unhealthy verb. The major challenge for students of Biblical Hebrew is the fact that even though everything is regular for healthy consonants, when you have weak consonants that disappear, it becomes difficult to know how to create the forms and how to analyze the forms. Letters such as Vav or Yod or Hey, they'll appear in some forms, but in other areas they'll disappear. And so that's a difficult thing for students of Biblical Hebrew today to navigate. That was a challenge for grammarians in the Middle Ages to try to understand what were the regular structures of Hebrew, because consonants kept disappearing. In Arabic, the inflections were more robust. There are more consonants are able to take the doubling. The consonants just do not disappear as often as they do in Hebrew. And therefore, the triconsonantal structure of the Semitic languages, which we take for granted, was only obvious when we looked at Arabic. And then we were able to say, well, of course, Hebrew is also triconsonantal. You just don't see it because of this, that, and the other exception. So so your comment, no, I'm only going to use the first names. Adam says that was Islam more tolerant than Christianity? In many ways that was the case. It's a difficult thing to quantify, but there was always a competition between Judaism and Christianity that didn't exist in that much between Judaism and Islam. I mean, in some way, Islam was very. I mean, they were very harsh to us in some ways. There's no question about it. But I think that there was a sense where Islam was more tolerant. Above all, it was more stable. And you could make longer range plans. I mean, it always depends on what you look at. I mean, why did Maimonides flee to Egypt? I mean, Maimonides didn't flee to Egypt because of the Christians. Maimonides fled to Egypt because of radical Muslims. So I don't think you can make it as a global rule, but there is a tendency, I think, for Islamic. I think it is a correct stereotype to say that Islamic civilization was more tolerant in many ways of Jews than Christian civilization was. Would that was still the case. That'd be great. I want to speak a little bit in closing about Judeo-Arabic. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, that if you wanted to belong to the elites, if you wanted to participate in the great conversations about philosophy, about medicine, about astronomy that were taking place in the Arab world, you had to do it in Arabic. And so it was only natural for the great works that were for the great works that were written by Jews in the Islamic world to be written in Arabic, and we have a long list of examples. Maimonides' commentary on the Mishnah is in Arabic. His Book of the Commandments is in Arabic. The Guide for the Perplexed is in Arabic. Judah Halevi's Kuzari is in Arabic. The Duties of the Heart is in Arabic. Maimonides wrote his Chuvot in Arabic. What many people don't know is that Judeo-Arabic, it's Arabic, but we never really used the Arabic alphabet. We always used the square script. And so what we have on the screen here is a copy of, this is an academic copy of the Chuvot of Maimonides. And on the left side, you can see that it's Hebrew. It says Hatshuva, Ka'asher Lochim Ha'or, etc., etc. That's the translation into Hebrew. On the right side is the original, which is written in Arabic, but it's written in the usual square letters that we would be accustomed to reading. And because Arabic has extra consonants, it has extra sounds, we have to use little dots and dashes to indicate the forms that the letters that exist in Arabic but don't exist in Hebrew. This is obscured by the way that scholarship worked at the beginning of the 19th century, when people began to publish academic versions of these Judeo-Arabic writings. They took the stuff that was written in the square Aramaic script and they transposed it into Arabic letters, and they published it as though it was always written in Arabic letters. And so if you know the Arabic alphabet, you can still read it, of course, but it obscured the way that they actually were composed. And it's only in the last half of the 20th century that people have become careful about publishing these things in academic forms in the way they were actually written, which is to say, written in the Arabic language, but written by means of the Hebrew or Aramaic square alphabet. And so this is, I think that's it's something good to know. I'm glad I know it. I hope you know it. Finally, of course, Arabic is part of our culture in Israel today. And we know that many problems between Jews and Arabs all over the world, and Israel's not an exception. But it really is, I think it's always nice when I'm there to see the signs written in three languages: English, Hebrew, and Arabic. It's so you read start with the Hebrew, Kirat Malachi Yerushalayim. In the Arabic, it says Yerushalayim twice. It says Yerushalim, and it says Al-Quds. You see Al-Quds written in parentheses off to the sides, because you have to cover all of the bases. And so that's even when you try to do the right thing, you have to be careful. And of course, there are many disagreements between our people that transcend language. But to me, it's hopeful and it's nice to think about the related history that our languages have had together. They really are sister languages, and to see them living side by side is very nice. To see them living side by side peacefully someday would be even nicer, and would be a worthy thing for all of us to pray and hope for as we go to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah. And that concludes our whirlwind tour of the Semitic languages. I will stay on for just a few moments to see if there are any questions. Next week, we're going to continue. Our class is going to be more Judaically related next week. We sort of had a little vacation of into academics with this stuff with the Semitic languages. And next week, we're going to talk about why we don't fast for 2 days in a row on Yom Kippur, even in the diaspora. But I will stay on for a couple of minutes to answer any questions, and I wish everyone a good Chag, L'Shana Tova. Okay, Shana Tova and a sweet new year. All the best.